Hey guys, Llama here with another video, and today we're going to be looking at some movement of blocks. So I've been wanting to do this video for a while. This is going to be my first in a actual guide series for the Create mod. So today we're going to be looking at 4 different ways on moving blocks. And this can also be anything like chest or storage devices such as like shulker boxes, chests, furnaces, etc. What things that you normally cannot move in default Minecraft. So this does not include items, it doesn't include any mobs or anything, this is just blocks. So before we get into some detail, we're going to go over just the 4 most basic ways to move blocks. We have the Gantry system, which is a vertical or horizontal method. We have pistons, which are just these sticky mechanical pistons, and then regulars. These just go up and down like a normal piston, but they're expandable. Then we have the bearing systems. So we have 3 different types of bearings. We have a windmill bearing, mechanical bearing, and a clock bearing. And last but not least, minecarts. And as you can see, there's a slight special block on top that is a pretty big deal that you can move, because you cannot move this in default Minecraft. But guys, now that we know the 4 types that we're working with, we'll go ahead and get into some detail. So as you can see, the Gantry system can work on both a horizontal and vertical system. And as soon as they stop, they become full blocks again. But as you can see, unlike some of the other systems that we'll look at, these are full blocks, so they will not phase through. There's some systems that they will completely phase through and not care about anything in front of them, but these do. So if I set, say, a sticky piston right here, it'll stop, and it'll stay stopped. You can either stick blocks to them with glue or use these linear chassis like a lot of other systems will use. It'll take whatever linear chassis you put onto it with it. So these are very, very handy. I personally like these for when you're moving entire rooms and contraptions, because I find it to be like just the sleekest way to do it. Because what you can do is, if you want it hidden at all you need to do is just add a couple blocks. So if we just take this, as you can see, this is going to be completely hidden. So say I make a floor up here, it's completely hidden right here. There's no seams at all. And then if I simply hit this again, it'll start going down. The only downside is that you're still going to see the gantry post. You can cover the gantry post as much as you want, but you're always going to see it when you're going up and down. That's the downside of it, I would say. Unlike using the piston though, I find it worth it, because you have to see that the entire time whenever it goes up and down. But unlike the piston one, it's all contained right here. You don't need any long pole going somewhere else that sticks out and you have to cover up and everything. You just have this one rod right here. So as you can see, the drill starts just going on its own as soon as the machine starts. So if you attach different machine styles to this, it'll just start working on its own. And as you can see, whatever's connected to it storage-wise will go straight into here. The gantry system's pretty simple overall, and there's not really much else to it. It pulls blocks on a single path, but it does it only as far as the gantry shaft will allow. So if you want to go further, you have to make the gantry shaft long. In my opinion, I prefer the gantry over a lot of other methods of moving blocks, just because of how easy and smooth it is to work with. But as always though, it's not a perfect system. So let's go ahead and get into the next one. So next we have the pistons. So these are just, in a way, they're just like mega pistons. So as you can see right here, this one's pushing out. This is our regular piston, this is our sticky. So as you can see, it leaves the block behind like a normal piston. But if you notice these poles back here, this is how you extend the pulley system. As you can see, it's not going anywhere because there's no extension poles. This is my personal hatred for these. I don't really hate them, but I just don't enjoy them, because you have to have these giant poles on the end. You have to have these giant poles on the end, and I'm not a fan of having those, unlike the gantry system as such. But it's not always stuck to it, so that's a big thing. So you can use the normal pistons and the sticky pistons just like a normal piston. These are very good in cases where you need, like, say, a double piston setup, and you can just run these instead. But I just don't quite recommend them for all the uses that you can use for the gantry. I haven't quite got into these yet. You guys could get more into them and show me some creations that you've done with the pistons versus, say, a gantry system or a pulley, which we'll be getting into next. But this is honestly a about it with them. It has the same kind of properties as the Gantry. It has where you can put storage onto it. You can't access the storage until it stops though. When it stops, it becomes full blocks again. I'm going to be getting into these a lot more soon because some of the contraptions I'm using. This is bare basics of what they do. You have to power them though, which is the only thing that's worse than a normal piston, is that you don't just get to use a piece of redstone and it's not instant. But you can make them faster, so they're a lot faster. Like everything else though in this mod pack, speeding them up makes them a whole lot harder to power. But as you can see, we have to just add any kind of poles, you need to make a big hole, and I don't like that personally. I don't really have much more to say on them because, like I said, I don't have the most experience on them. One thing to watch out for, I do remember, they have a 64 block limit. So as you can see, it just keeps going for a while. And be careful, it will just destroy anything you have in front of it. And if you have anything obstructing it, it'll also just stop. So as you can see, we have a pole length of 6, a pole length of 23. And it stopped because I have some blocks back there I haven't taken out yet. So it's just going to stop right there. So just be careful of that. But if you go ahead and it'll connect with any poles that it hits. So say I have a pole length of 4, I'm missing 4. Well, boom. Now I have a pole length of 23 again. So if I just let it go, it'll just keep going. So this is 63 blocks right here. You're not really going to need it for much because, in my opinion, gantry shafts are better for this use. As far as I've seen, gantry shafts have no limit. With a 64 block limit, you're really not going to have any kind of struggle getting anywhere. So I would say it's more than enough. If you're using more than 64 blocks length, then I really don't know what to tell you because that's a long distance for a piston. So this is the pulley system. I use this in a lot of stuff for mine, especially the quarry. This is the main thing that runs the quarry. So it'll pull down and bring up any block attached to it in this one block space, basically. So it's way more compact than a lot of stuff. A lot of people use this for elevators and such instead of, say, the gantry shaft over there or the pistons, just because it's in a 1 block unit. It only goes 64 blocks though, so be careful with that max. But it's a very low stress rating. So even at max, it's only 1024 and it's very fast. So it's probably my favorite of all the different ways to move blocks, only because it's just so easy to use. However, like many people found in my video, you have to be careful because if you accidentally don't glue one thing, it won't move anymore. So be very careful about that. But anything that you glue to it, it will move, and it stops just like all the other contraptions. If it hits anything block related, it stops. That way it just doesn't bang into anything. I personally like that being a thing on a lot of these, just because that way you don't accidentally just tear up your entire world. But that's about it for this one as well. A lot of these, it's just they stop, they become full blocks, they won't move unless it's stuff stuck to them. The next couple that we look at though will have some new properties just because of the way they work. There is no horizontal motion, it's only vertical. That's the only downside to this really. But I prefer it a lot more compared to the other two for some things, and for some things not. It just, like always, it really depends on what you're working on. So right here we have probably three of the most used things in a lot of Create. We have the windmill bearing, the mechanical bearing, and the clock bearing. So this is the clockwork bearing. It's a really, really cool one. So you can do two different hands. You can do an hour hand and a minute hand. So if you go ahead and have the first structure right here, make sure all of it's glued, attached, and everything, and then have another structure on top of it, make sure it's not glued to this one, and have it all glued together to itself, and it will do the minute hand. So that's the way that you do the two different hands. But that's the general gist of this. It's really, really cool for making like automated clocks and things. I've even seen someone on Reddit do a complete digital clock using this analog system to convert into digital and to make a perfectly timed clock. I thought that was really, really cool. I'm going to be working with these in future bases that I use for whenever I have Create and such, because I want to do like some big, huge clock system. I think that'd be really cool. But next we have the windmill bearing. So as you can see, the properties of these are kind of wacky. They go through blocks, they phase through anything. As you can see, this creates kinetic stress capacity. So this will power whatever you need to. This is probably the best early game that you can get. Water wheels are a close second, but I'll be going over all that in a power video. So go ahead and hit the sub button right now if you want to see that in the future. I'll be making it sometime for next week. But as you can see, you just attach the sails onto a block. So we'll go ahead and stop it. So these sails, the middle block will automatically attach, but you could do sails if you wanted to. and all the sails automatically will connect to each other. So no matter what you do, you don't have to glue them or anything. Wool blocks and such also work, but I recommend just using the sails early game because they're cheap. So the more sails and such that you add, the more stress capacity gets and the faster it'll go. But I personally like doing just something simple to start off with. But this is how I power a lot of my machines and such that are kind of independent of everything. I just use a windmill, and it's honestly just the best power source to just throw on something. The big downside that I found though is if you try to move it, you can't. While it's currently turning, you cannot move the windmill at all, which I really hate, but I understand why they did that. So as you can see, this guy turning over here, going through literally just everything in the wall. This is the mechanical bearing. So this is probably the most used thing that I use personally. The mechanical bearing is just really, really powerful for what it is. It's a low stress system that can just move an astronomical amount of blocks. This is how I move the Corey system that I made, along with a lot of other systems that I do. And one of the really, really cool things, so if I go ahead and stop this, and if I put on another bearing right here, this is probably the coolest thing, in my opinion, on the whole part. So if I just make that long, you would think, hey, it's just going to turn with the rest of the system. It's not going to do anything different. Well, that's where you'd be wrong. So if you attach a mechanical bearing to a mechanical bearing system, it actually keeps that rotational system straight, which is just really, really useful. So I didn't quite think about it for a while, but there's so many uses for this. I saw one person do it with minecarts where they had this, and it would push the minecart up and down, and it would make a really, really smooth transition. That would be really cool for, like, say, factories or something, or pistons of some sort for design-wise. Or if you want to make a Ferris wheel, this is really good because you can keep them all level while it goes up like a real Ferris wheel. But as you also saw right here, it does break whatever blocks it goes in contact with, so be careful of that. Like other things, as it rotates, drills work, chests will take in storage for whatever's on there. And if you use something like a deployer or something, they still work as well. And as on all these machines, as the deployer pushes out, it'll take anything from any inventory on them. So it's really, really useful for just moving stuff around and such. But that's all three of the bearings, really. So here we are at the last version of moving blocks, the minecarts. So this is probably the most advanced way to move blocks, I would say. So you have 4 different rails that do 4 different things when it comes to moving blocks around. You have your activator rail, you have a normal rail that's under here, a detector rail, and a power rail. We're going to go ahead and start off with the power rail just because it's the easiest. When you activate it, it'll push the minecart and it'll attach whatever is on it. So all these have to be attached. So all these have to be powered for them to attach the blocks. So as soon as you power it, it powers the rail and it pushes it along with it. And as it's unpowered, it doesn't bother with it. It attaches back. So this is probably my favorite version because I can power it and it'll reattach the block and send it off and it'll unattach. An activator rail doesn't need one of these card assemblers to unattach these. So as soon as you hit it, the block is now unattached. This is a block again. So this is if you want to just leave it where it's at. You're not going to push the card around or anything. You just want to keep it in that one spot. Unlike all the other ones that they need a card assembler. This is the only one that doesn't. So next up, we have just the normal rail. So we'll go and activate it. It doesn't move. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't push. It's just a normal rail. So this is what you would use. Say you're in between rails and you're moving along and you want to pick something up on your way. Well, this would be the rail you would want to use. Because as you send it through, it just goes right on through it. Next, though, we have the detector rail. So this is a rail that normally sends power anyways. So this last rail, the detector rail, I'm not quite understanding it myself. If you guys have any better explanation on how this works, because it works once every time I use it and then it just breaks itself, as you can see right now. I'm not sure if it's how I have it set up. So if you have any more documentation, let me know. But it's supposed to assemble unassembled cart contraptions and disassemble assembled cart contraptions while it's activated. As you can see, it doesn't do anything for me. It just kind of glitches out, which I understand the idea of why. Because what it's doing, this is getting power as it goes over. So it activates the entire unit, but I'm not quite understanding why it's just not taking anything with it. So guys, if you have any better explanation, please let me know. So as you can see right now, we have a spawner on here. So this is a pretty big thing. You can get spawners and pick them up in a normal world. And as you just saw, I picked up this entire minecart contraption. And I'm in creative mode so I can keep placing them. but it's a completely usable spawner that you can just take anywhere with you. As soon as you knock it down, you have a full spawner that you can move on its own. That's a pretty big deal, and you can do any kind of big contraptions. If I wanted to add more to this, I could pretty easily, and just have this giant contraption that I can just take anywhere, drop down, and then pick back up. Minecarts are really, really powerful. So if you want me to, I can do some more advanced things with them just to show you guys what all they can do. But the most basic understanding is using those 4 different rails and just using cart assemblers on them. What we've done in our world is we actually created a complete train that you can ride. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to this, but like I said before, I'm keeping this pretty simple. I don't want to make too much information in this one video, and these are kind of a weird one to go with. No cat. My cat is trying to claw the screen. There's a lot going on with just these types of things on their own. I will do some more research, I will do more planning, and I'll get some bigger, better contraptions to kind of show you guys just the full extent of what they can do, but this is the most basic thing. So there's not much more to go into this. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I have some more of these guides that are going to be going up. I want to keep them all simple. I want to keep things very simple to get the beginners in, because I know that some of this stuff can get very complex. It's just like redstone. You want to go and keep it simple for the beginners, and then I'm going to branch out into more advanced stuff as I learn more as well, and that will help you guys learn more, and I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible to understand. But to give you just a rough summary, you have the shafts, which are vertical or horizontal. You have pistons, which are vertical and horizontal. You have the mechanical bearings, the windmill bearing and such, which are rotational. You have minecarts that just go wherever a minecart can go. And you have the pulley, which just goes in a vertical motion. But guys, I really hope you enjoy, and go and hit that sub button. It'll keep you updated videos. There's going to be a lot more coming out. I'm hoping to get a lot more content out to you guys. And if you like the video, go and hit that like button. It tells me what you guys enjoy watching, and that kind of gives me an idea of what you guys want. But overall, if you have any comments, let me know, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye, people!